On April 3, 2025, the South China Sea erupted. A volley of Chinese HQ-9B missiles ripped through the atmosphere, hurtling toward a formation with an extremely strong radar signature, less than 200 nautical miles from Hainan Island. They believed their dense anti-access area denial A2AD network, from ASA radars and J-16 fighters to deep-layer air defenses, would swallow any threat before it could reach their territorial waters. But they targeted wrong. It wasn't a drone, not a reconnaissance plane, but the USS Reagan, an invincible nuclear-powered supercarrier. Less than 72 hours later, 12 Tomahawk missiles from U.S. destroyers and submarines slammed into the Guangdong coast, each carrying a 1,000-pound warhead, flying just above the surface at 550 miles per hour, turning PLA command bunkers, defensive radars, and airfields to ashes. Air defense systems once lauded as an impenetrable kill net, shattered in the flash of GPS-guided bombs and electronic warfare suppression from EA-18G Growlers. When the dust settled, over $5.7 billion of Chinese military equipment had vanished, and their entire coastal defense system was forced to retreat 200 miles inland. So, what truly happened in the most devastating naval battle in the Pacific since World War II? And why could a single carrier strike group crush an entire anti-access strategy that China had spent decades building? If you're interested in sharp military analysis, modern scenarios, future war technology, and real geopolitical confrontations, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment, because what you're about to see will completely change your perception of modern warfare. When the South China Sea shook, the South China Sea on the morning of April 3, 2025 was eerily calm. Yet beneath its blue waters, the undercurrent of tension between great powers churned. Less than 90 nautical miles southwest of Scarborough Shoal, Chinese military radars at Subi and Fiery Cross Reefs simultaneously detected a naval formation emitting an intense electromagnetic signal. Imagery from the JL-1 satellite showed a cluster of U.S.-flagged warships approaching the median line. With all navigation radars active, no concealment, no retreat, just a direct advance. At the Southern Theater Command headquarters in Guangzhou, screens lit up with alerts. Chinese commanders analyzed the situation the U.S. carrier strike group was approaching just as China completed its force buildup on the artificial islands. Since a series of tense confrontations between Chinese Coast Guard vessels and Philippine, Malaysian, and Vietnamese forces, Beijing's leadership was determined not to lose face in these waters again. 06:45 a.m. Based on the national security law and a strategic assessment of the situation, the order came from the highest command level. Limited attack, eliminate the threat to approaching sovereignty. Immediately, HQ-9B missile launchers along the Hainan coast erected, while J-16s from Lingshui Air Base scrambled, carrying PL-15 long-range missiles. Chinese generals placed their hopes in their dense defensive network, from JY-27A long-range radars, HQ-9 batteries, to dozens of fighter squadrons ready to form a thick air defense layer. The deterrent strike was precisely calculated, targeting what they believed was a drone swarm or a U.S. auxiliary warship. But minutes later, the truth unfolded in layers. That intense radar signature belonged to the USS Ronald Reagan, CVN-76, one of the U.S. Navy's primary nuclear aircraft carriers, measuring over 180 feet long, displacing over 100,000 tons, and powered by two A4W reactors energizing its entire radar system. The Reagan carried tactical power far exceeding any warship ever seen in these waters. Escorting the Reagan were two Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, and beneath the waves, a Virginia-class attack submarine stealthily monitoring every Chinese move. At 06:52 a.m., the SPY-1DV radar on the Reagan immediately confirmed missile launches from the PLA. The entire strike group shifted to DEFCON 2. Red alert lights flashed across the system from the control room, the phased array radar, to the flight deck preparing for air operations. The Virginia-class submarine relayed coordinates of 4 coastal command bases, but no firing order was given yet. Strategic firepower remained reserved. Tomahawks had not left their tubes. In the sky, F-35C Lightning II squadrons armed and prepared for launch. The Reagan's multi-layered defense system began its deployment. SM-6Is tracked the HQ-9s in their mid-course phase. ESSM stood ready for short-range interception, and CIWS phalanx cannons swiveled, awaiting final commands. The carrier was not alone. Not caught by surprise, it was designed precisely for this moment. In the planet's most disputed waters, once called a geopolitical powder keg, a tactical miscalculation by Beijing triggered a chain reaction. The Reagan did not retreat, nor did it call for dialogue. It activated its radars, filled its missile tubes, and transmitted a chilling message in the form of a defense system rating at maximum capacity. The first clash between China and a U.S. aircraft carrier didn't begin with a declaration of war. It began with overconfidence, with misjudgment, and with the ignition of a nuclear fortress that had never fallen. China's disastrous attack, 07:00 a.m., on the control screen inside the USS Ronald Reagan. A flash appeared near the Paracel Islands. It wasn't lightning, nor atmospheric interference. It was the reflection from the radar seeker of an HQ-9B just launched from the Hainan Island coast, following a twisting trajectory directly toward the intensely bright electromagnetic signal in the disputed waters. Within 12 minutes of the firing order from the PLA's Southern Theater Command, the skies over the southeastern South China Sea became a network of fire and shock waves. 6 HQ-9s drew white smoke trails through the mid-atmosphere, locking onto the U.S. warship formation, approaching Scarborough Shoal. Simultaneously, 12 J-16 fighters from Lingshui Air Base formed a V-shape, activated their AESA radars, and armed PL-15s air-to-air missiles capable of striking from over 100 miles away. On the Reagan, the red alert lights had not changed color. The SPY-1DV phased array radars had tracked the entire HQ-9 flight sequence, combined with imagery from the E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft sweeping the battlefield. In the central control room, fire control officers simultaneously managed over 150 targets. They appeared, vanished, returned, locked on, then dispersed as if space had become a digital labyrinth. The USS Halsey and Arleigh Burke-class destroyer escorting the Reagan from the west was the first warship to open fire. 2 SM-6 missiles launched into the air from its Yaokou 41 vertical launch system, traveling at over Mach 3.5 immediately after. From the USS Chancellorsville, a volley of ESSM missiles flew diagonally, cutting across the HQ-9's firing lanes. Signals tracked each accelerating, phase splitting, and redirecting Chinese missile, but U.S. radars pursued every slightest change. 3 HQ-9s exploded at an altitude of over 50,000 feet, creating a halo of burning metal fragments falling onto the sea surface. 2 others veered off course, crashing into the water 4 nautical miles from the Reagan, generating shock waves strong enough to make the flight deck shudder for a few seconds. The last one never reached its terminal phase. In the air, the U.S. response didn't stop at interception. The Reagan's flight deck opened, and 4 F-35C Lightning IIs roared with afterburners, streaking into the sky from the over 1,000-foot runway. They didn't fly alone. 60 nautical miles away, an E-2D Hawkeye was directly transmitting the coordinates of each J-16. Beneath a cloudless sky, the aerial combat unfolded like a symphony of speed. The F-35Cs did not activate their active radar systems. They relied entirely on target data from the Hawkeye and their carrier. AIM-120Ds left their launchers, each streaking toward the enemy on the most perfect trajectory that ballistic mathematics could calculate. Within less than 30 seconds, 3 J-16s burst into flames in the upper atmosphere, exploding in the early morning sun. Paralysis began to spread through the PLA formation. Some J-16s hastily broke formation, looping sharply northwest. But the Reagan's radars never lost sight. EA-18G Growlers appeared on screens like electronic ghosts, deeply interfering with the navigation radars of PL-15s in transit. 2 exploded prematurely due to data loss. The remaining 3 were pursued by RAM, RIM-166, via their infrared signals to the horizon. A bright streak of fire below deck. The Reagan's tactical officer gripped the radio so tightly that veins bulged on his hand. But he didn't need to shout. The Aegis combat system operated like an artificial brain trained in dozens of scenarios. Everything was processed according to procedure: identify, intercept, react, report, calculate, counterstrike. Not a second was wasted. 07:25 a.m. The PLA lost at least 6 J-16s, 4 PL-15s, and its entire HQ-9 volley was destroyed. What was supposed to be a strategic opening strike became a technological demonstration of U.S. interception capabilities. The Chinese command at Woody Island transmitted the order, withdraw J-11 squadrons from the engagement zone, disperse. The South China Sea sky suddenly became empty. But what remained wasn't peace. It was the stillness preceding a storm of retribution beneath the sea. The Virginia-class submarine continued to silently track the southern flank of Hainan Island. Radar coordinates, refueling stations, and PLA command centers were being encrypted and transmitted back to the Reagan via military satellite. Those numbers hadn't led to any launches yet, but every single number had been fed into the pre-planned target system of a weapon still in its tubes, something the PLA had feared for 2 decades. The Tomahawk firestorm flattens all targets. 07:42 a.m., the southwestern South China Sea had just endured an air defense storm. On the USS Ronald Reagan, target data continued to stream in from the E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft and the Virginia-class submarine silently beneath the sea near Palawan. In the red glow of the Combat Control Center, a 3D map displayed 3 hotspots: a long-range radar station on Fiery Cross Artificial Island, a submerged command center along the Hainan Island coast, and a hardened radar missile complex near Lingshui Air Base. U.S. naval officers needed no further confirmation. Precise targeting data had locked onto the objectives, and satellite imagery confirmed every bunker roof, every transmitting radar dome. The encrypted directive, sent via the Milstar military satellite system, was transmitted in less than 1.2 seconds. The order was activated Strike Chain V8, a strategic deep counterattack plan using long-range weapons. 07:48 a.m. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Halsey and USS Chancellorsville, simultaneously opened the covers of their MAK-41 vertical launch systems. From within, Tomahawk Block 4 missiles carrying 1,000-pound warheads departed their launchers at a cruise speed of 550 miles per hour. No large flames, no roar, just a thin white smoke column drawing a low arc across the sky, then disappearing close to the sea surface, almost simultaneously, at a depth of over 500 feet. The Virginia-class submarine fired 4 more Tomahawks from a position outside China's sonar patrol range. All traveled using digital terrain contour matching TIRCOM combined with military GPS, requiring no further guidance. Each cruise missile was programmed with a unique flight path, but upon entering the danger zone, they converged into 3 strike groups, forming a pincer movement to simultaneously attack the 3 primary targets, at a distance of less than 40 meters above sea level. The infrared seekers on each Tomahawk began activating their guidance adjustment mode, weaving through rock formations, skimming the edges of forests, following mountain slopes where PLA ground radars couldn't reach. The radar station on Fiery Cross Island was the first to be hit. 3 Tomahawks slammed in from the northeast, separated by only 1.5 seconds. The first explosion completely severed the backup power supply. The second crushed the JY-27A phased array antenna, and the final explosion penetrated the data processing center under the concrete layers. A mushroom cloud rose over 300 feet, blackening the sky around the area. At Lingshui Air Base, the HQ-16 air defense system activated 9 seconds too late. Radar signals detected the Tomahawks when they were only 11 miles away, a distance almost insufficient to determine the speed of the low-flying but extremely terrain-hugging trajectories. One HQ-16 was launched, but the Tomahawk changed course, using altitude data threading through a mountain pass, looping back, and striking the command tower. 2 others collapsed a 500-meter section of runway and exploded directly in front of an aircraft hangar entrance, creating a shockwave that broke even the blast-proof arch. At the Hainan Command Center, 4 Tomahawks from the Virginia-class submarine approached from the South China Sea. One exploded directly in front of the underground bunker housing communication servers, while 2 others penetrated deep with delayed fuses, creating seismic waves that destroyed the entire subterranean structure. The entire PLA Combat Command network south of Hainan Island was severed in 4.6 seconds, just enough time for every warning light in the bunker to turn off simultaneously. 8:06 a.m. Satellite imagery from Maxar and the U.S. Navy's Space Reconnaissance Station sent back the first photos. The radar station at Fiery Cross was nothing but a twisted, molten heap of metal, its dome torn like a tin can. The command bunker revealing scorched earth. The command center in Hainan was shattered from within. Lingshui Air Base became a battlefield reeking of burning fuel. The entire PLA information network in the southern region could not transmit tactical data for over 90 minutes afterward. Chinese military television in the Guangdong area went off the air for 17 minutes. Internal networks at auxiliary radar bases received no counterattack directives because all central communication equipment had been destroyed. The contingency command post at the Sancha Electronic Control Station was forced to switch to independent defense Shimyu-Saban mode, no longer capable of networked combat. 08:12 a.m. On the Reagan's flight deck, the combat engineers retrieved targeting data. 12 Tomahawk missiles, 12 targets, 12 burning points etched deep into the PLA's map, with holes that could not be patched with threats or negotiations. No alarms, no red alerts, no countdown screens. Just a deadly silence, ruthlessly precise. Each Tomahawk leaving its launcher was a statement the US didn't respond with outrage. They responded with fire, with coordinates, and with the ability to obliterate an entire command chain in less than 25 minutes. The battle that solidified global supremacy. Following the engagement between the US and China in the South China Sea, satellite imagery revealed severe destruction to China's coastal defense system. From Guangdong to Hainan, defensive radars were completely inoperable, and control centers were heavily damaged, reduced to scorched concrete blocks. The operational stations for the HQ-9 missile systems were now shattered, smoking like still-hot ruins. The southern Chinese coast no longer emitted any electromagnetic signals strong enough for US military satellites to detect. The burn marks left by JDAM-guided bombs were clearly visible on runways and concrete structures. Fiery Cross Island, once a vital radar hub, was now just a faint bright spot on the P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft's infrared display. On the night of April 4th, the Southern Theater Command of the People's Liberation Army PLA issued an urgent order. All auxiliary radars were to cease operation, and all civilian broadcasting equipment was to be suspended. Type 054A frigates retreated to port, their radars covered in protective bunkers, and all communications switched to the highest encryption mode in Guangdong. Authorities issued an electricity usage restriction across the coastal region, and industrial factories cut satellite connections to avoid signal detection. At the command center in Beijing, an urgent meeting lasted over 3 hours. All analytical data was transmitted through separate channels, completely isolated from the internal defense network. No announcements appeared on domestic media channels. Keywords such as U.S. aircraft carrier, Reagan, or to Tomahawk were blocked on domestic social media platforms. The information control system, which usually reacted swiftly to military events, was now in a state of vigilant silence. On the other side of the Pacific, the USS Reagan Carrier Strike Group maintained continuous operations for 7 days. No military vessels or aircraft dared to enter the area within 250 nautical miles of the formation. F-35Cs were constantly ready on the flight deck, while SPY-6 radars continuously scanned, creating complete control over the area, like the calm sea before a storm. In regional capitals, reactions unfolded quietly. Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia ordered inspections and strengthened protection of their exclusive economic zones. From Tokyo to Canberra, military experts conducted war simulations in closed-door meetings. In Brussels, NATO held internal meetings to analyze the effectiveness of long-range carrier-launched weapons, based on newly collected data. In Taipei, the island's defense system was urgently upgraded following the U.S. multi-layered defense model. Every radar, every sensor, every missile launcher was reconfigured to be ready for response. Amidst the heavy damage, what remained on the strategic map were not weapons, but voids in power, trust, and the difference between strategy on paper and battlefield reality. The lesson for Beijing was clear when striking at the core of U.S. military strength. There is no opportunity to retreat. Every HQ-9 missile launched from the mainland led to a powerful chain reaction from SPY-6 radars, SM-6 missiles, the Aegis system, and ultimately, Tomahawks precisely striking every coordinate. In modern warfare, where information spreads faster than the sound of an explosion, the U.S. does not need to declare victory. They only need to utilize their advanced weapon systems and technology. When the smoke clears, the adversary understands what has happened. For China, its multi-billion-dollar anti-access strategy, once considered an impenetrable defensive wall, was now nothing but fragments in the ocean. Faith in the HQ-9 missiles, PL-15s, artificial islands, and radar systems was shattered by precise attacks without fanfare, only the red light from infrared devices and flight paths accurate to the centimeter. All content above is for simulation, hypothetical, strategic, and analytical purposes only. It is not intended to incite violence, political bias, or provoke military action or war. The content solely represents our hypothetical simulation and personal analysis of potential scenarios. Any misinterpretation will not be accepted. We are not responsible for any understanding or application derived from the video content. Viewers should exercise their own judgment, verify information, and engage critically. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end. If you are passionate about military affairs, enjoy analysis, and like to propose hypotheses, then stay with our channel. If you found this video interesting, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our daily updates. Now, you can watch some of our latest and most popular videos currently on screen. Goodbye and see you in the next video.